But our top story tonight, and the story that we are breaking this evening, because just a short while ago, the Narendra Modi government has concluded an important meeting on the economic slowdown. The NDA government's top economic minds have gone into a huddle this evening to finalize a plan to revive the economy that many now believe is the biggest challenge facing the Modi government. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley has chaired a meet to take stock of the economy. Suresh Prabhu, the Commerce Minister, Piyush Goyal, the Railways and Power Minister, Railways and Coal Minister have attended that meeting. Niti Aayog Vice Chairman Rajiv Kumar is also there, and all secretaries of the Finance Ministry have been called. We are told that Mr. Jaitley will brief the Prime Minister after finalizing a strategy at that meeting. That's the big story that's breaking this evening. Let's go straight across to our National Affairs Editor, Rahul Srivastav, joining me at the moment. Rahul, this meeting coming amidst growing concern over the economic figures. What exactly is the government's plan of action?
Rajdeep, what we are being told after a nearly 2.5 hour long meeting, that this is not an ordinary bread and butter meeting in which issues for the next cabinet or others are decided, that this is a more than a usual meeting. The meeting attended by ministers who, if you notice, are all infrastructure ministers, railways and Mr. Piyush Goyal. Mr. Suresh Prabhu, what we are being told that the focus of this is economic rejuvenation. Why economic rejuvenation? If you see the GDP figure, it has fallen compared to the last year. It fell compared to even the last quarter, which was at 6.1 to 5.7, and that's where the alarm bells are ringing. Not only the GDP fell, but even the inflation shot up. There are concerns about the rising prices of petroleum, though in which the government says that it is the state governments worried over the fall in revenue because of GST are trying to draw in more money from the system. But the fact remains that alarm bells in the government are ringing, because along with this economic despair, there is a sense that employment generation and industrial output both are not going to go up. Bodies like the FICCI are saying that in the next 1 year, only 26% more companies are likely to hire new people, and only 27% companies are planning to invest more for future as far as capital is concerned. And that is why top sources in the government are saying that this meeting is to look at serious avenues and impetus as far as policies are concerned regarding exports, industrial output and employment generation. These meetings, this is perhaps the third meeting in a series. In fact, Rajdeep, the last meeting was yesterday, which lasted for nearly 4 hours. And before that, the finance minister had met officials on Saturday evening.
Right.
Now, the strategy is still not final. The final policy measures which are likely to be announced or will be taken to the Prime Minister will need perhaps yet another round. But it's a sign that the government is worried and is working to amend the situation.
The government is worried. The mood of denial is slowly ending when it comes to the economy. Rahul Srivastav there joining us, reporting on that big meeting that's taken place. And I want to raise those questions right at the very top tonight, because this is the issue which perhaps is the biggest challenge now facing the Indian central government. The economy in slow lane, alarm bells for the Modi government. Remember, because growth for April-June, and let's give the figures now. Growth for April-June has dropped to 5.7%. That's the lowest in 3 years. Industrial growth at 1.2% in July. It was 4.5% at the same time last year. Retail inflation, which was completely under control, has risen to 3.36, highest in 5 months. Current account deficit is at 2.4% of GDP April to June, which is the highest in 4 years. Growth in private investment, which is really a big concern for the government, has dipped to 1.61% in April-June. No one is making in India as the government had hoped. And a CMIE report, Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, says 15 lakh jobs lost in January to April. That's a worry. And agricultural growth has dipped to 2.3% in April to June. Gross value added grew just 0.3%. So is the economy in a real crisis, or are we simply exaggerating the situation? The questions tonight: is the Modi government in denial on the state of the economy? How can the government revive economic growth? How can the Modi government create more jobs? What should be done to boost private investment? Is cutting interest rates the only way to raise growth? Is the RBI being excessively cautious by not slashing rates? Or is there something fundamentally wrong at the moment with the economy? Joining me tonight, top economic minds are joining me. I'm joined by Dr. Arun Kumar, economist at JNU and someone who's spoken out strongly against demonetization in particular. Surjit Bhalla, who's been a supporter by and large of the government's economic policies. He's written a strong piece today in the Indian Express. He joins me. Rajdeep Dubey, managing editor at Business Today, is with me. Also joining me is Avik Saha, national convener, Swaraj India. And I'm joined by Shailesh Haribhakti, the non-executive chairman at L&T Finance, a leading director in several top corporates. I appreciate all of you joining us at the moment. Let me turn to you, Mr. Bhalla, because you've been among those who presented in the past a rosy picture. Are you now worried about the state of the economy? And do you believe it is in some way linked to demonetization? Or is that only one reason, perhaps, for the state in which the government and the economy finds itself?
Yeah. Well, to briefly answer your questions, Rajdeep, I'm absolutely worried about the state of the economy. The second question, and I think there is a structural issue which I will discuss in a minute. The growth rate is genuinely bad. The economy is in bad shape. There are no two ways around it. Couple of ways by which we can look at this. You know, it was very amusing, if you will, in a tragic sort of way, when you said that people are worried that retail inflation has jumped to 3.3%, the highest in 6 months. I'm afraid, Rajdeep, this is the kind of, if you will, fear that I am afraid of the most. Because the fault lies not with the government, not with the demonetization, but with an independent body called the RBI. We have high real interest rates, the highest in the world except for Brazil and Russia. No country has grown, you look through the records, where with a 3 to 4% real rates, policy rates, that they have managed to grow. So this is, you know, absurd.
No,
So
are you telling me, Dr. Bhalla, are you telling me, Dr. Bhalla, that if interest, sorry to intervene, are you telling me if interest rates were lower, suddenly private investment within this country would step up? I was at an economic conference of bankers last week where they said, look, at the end of the day, the factors go well beyond interest rates. There is just a lack of confidence at the moment.
Okay. You know, the problem with India and Indians is that we think we are unique, including our bankers, if you will. There's absolutely no problem with this proposition that Indian corporates, deeply indebted, partly half due to corruption reasons and half due to their balance sheet problems and half due to, if you will, a quarter due to the interest rates, they cannot be helped by interest rate declines. But Rajdeep, that's not the entire economy. You know, even your farmer takes loans. Even his interest rate is affected by what the RBI does. So let us all get real. You know, this idea that a few fat cats who are in deep trouble determine the investment structure of the economy is really plain wrong. This is not the case either in India or in any other country of the world. So we have to get really, really real over here.
Happy to get
and
real.
Look at what the RBI has done.
Yes.
That's where the blame lies. You answer my question.
Yes.
You answer my question.
Yes.
Why would, if interest rates were to decline by 200 basis points tomorrow, what do you think will happen to investment? What do you think will happen to confidence? What do you think will happen to growth?
I'm not the expert. Rajdeep Dubey is the expert. What would happen to growth?
I think there is crisis of confidence, and at this point in time, if you look at it, with the rate at which the capacity utilization is short, you know, most industries, the capacity utilization is between 65 and 75%. Even if you reduce interest rates drastically today, it's not as if the investment cycle is going to kick in right away. You know, when you're in a situation like this, you have to stimulate, invigorate 4 factors. You know, capital has to be stimulated, labor has to be stimulated, entrepreneurship has to be stimulated, and land has to be stimulated. And then you can see a multifold growth. It cannot be just with the interest rate factor.
I'll come to those 4 factors in a moment because they require the kind of aggressive reform that maybe the Prime Minister at times has tried but then has had to step back, for example, on land acquisition. But Shailesh Haribhakti, what is your view? Surjit Bhalla is saying that if you reduce interest rates, the economy will be kick-started. Do you believe, as someone who lives in Bombay, works with corporates closely, is it a crisis of confidence, as Rajdeep Dubey points out, or simply interest rates being too high at the moment?
I think it's partly both. We do need to see a drop in interest rates because we want to see the real interest rate come down. But I don't think that's going to be the leading way to do this. The leading way to do this is to jumpstart the MSME sector. That is the true engine of growth, the true engine of job creation, and the true engine of exports. I believe that if the MSME sector is focused on and the construction industry is given a boost and the inflation which is resulting partly from the service sector GST which has been pegged at 18%, then we can see a very quick turnaround. I think we have huge amount of consumption. The problem of inflation that was mentioned has nothing to do with demand impulse.
Sure.
It is all to do with supply side. The external factor of the crude price going up has also been a dampener. But my view is that if the focus is shifted to the MSME sector, the construction sector, and if exports are given a boost, we will see a quick revival with even 100 basis point drop in interest rates.
You know, that's interesting you're saying that, because many believe that these are precisely the areas, MSMEs in particular, which have taken a double whammy. First there was demonetization last November and now GST in June, July. And Dr. Arun Kumar, as an economist who's been a critic of demonetization, there are those who are saying that actually the signs, the green shoots of an economic decline, if I may call that, were witnessed in the second quarter last year before demonetization. Do you believe demonetization has aggravated that? Or do you believe, like Dr. Bhalla, that we are unnecessarily targeting demonetization for the possible slowdown in the economy? The slowdown certainly, but for the crisis as now it's being described.
So, you know, Rajdeep, first point is that the rate of growth is much less than 5.7% also, because the unorganized sector is not factored in. And that's where the real crisis is, that sector has had two big shocks. One, the demonetization, the other, the GST, and both of that have hit the unorganized sector very hard. The second point is that actually even before demonetization, the economy had been running itself down, and the rate of growth had been sliding. And if you see, the credit offtake had come down to the lowest in 50 years in October, 1 month before November 8th started. And post-November, it has come down further, and in July and August, it has come down to negative, which has never happened before. And as some of the analysts have been pointing out, it is because capacity utilization in industry is very low. Private sector investment has declined, and if you remember, CMIE pointed out in December last year that the investment by the private sector had declined by almost 50% post demonetization. So in a sense, what you have is a problem of demand. Unless demand is boosted, you know, you're not going to have a revival. Interest rate can only have a limited impact given the capacity utilization is low and demand is low. So how do you boost demand in this situation? You have to have, you know, the unorganized sector taken care of, and with the GST problem that is there, that's unlikely to happen very soon. The other is the investment in the infrastructure is not likely to happen in the private sector anytime soon, because the large NPAs, the banks are not willing to lend to them, and the infrastructure companies are not able to take loans and absorb those loans and invest further. So the only thing left is then public sector. Can you boost public sector enough to counter the decline in investment in the economy and to increase demand, and especially create jobs in the unorganized sector of the economy? Once you begin to create jobs in the unorganized sector of the economy and increase investment in the economy as a whole through public sector investment, then there's some chance that there may be a revival.
You know, but these are all obviously tough measures that need to be undertaken, not easy in the times in which we live, because there is a lack of confidence, as Rajiv Dubey points it. But there is also the concern, Avik, that's where you come in as someone who's been working with the farm sector. Agricultural incomes, farm incomes are static at the moment. We've seen already only last week in Sikar 10 days that a district came to a halt because farmers were protesting, wanting higher remunerative prices for their produce. Traders are troubled by GST. Is the farm sector just as badly affected at the moment? Despite a decent monsoon, there isn't any pickup in the farm sector.
Rajdeep, the decent monsoon myth will soon brick. 225 districts of this country are in drought. So that's a different question. We don't even know the ramification of that situation. But so far as the farm sector is concerned, this government has a cranial paralysis. There is no intention to resolve the farm price issue. Last year, there was a silver bullet of the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. This year, it's now become contract farming. So there is no solution, there is no intention to solve it, and you just pass it on and expect the private sector to solve it. As a result, last year, 25,000 crore has gone out in premium to the insurance companies. I'm sure they're in regular legit business. But what has come back to the farm sector? Almost nothing.
You know, I must tell our audiences that you are with the Swaraj Andolan, and therefore you will be someone who will be seen as a critic today of the government. But, you know, even from a neutral perspective, do you believe that the crisis is as major as some are making it out to be, that this is now a terminal crisis, particularly in the farm sector, that there is only so much that the government can do?
I wish you were doing this show in a mandi, where the trucks come in and the grains are sold. There is just no price. And we are applying Band-Aid on very serious cancer. That's not a treatment. And look at the solution.
What is the solution?
Overall, there has to be a rational price of the farm produce, and that will impact food prices. But as a nation, we have to look at that as a cost of living. We can't go on subsidizing. The farmers are paying more than 2 lakh crore subsidy to the people of this country. But forget the farmers for a moment. There is no real increase in price. This Diwali, you will have 3 lakh ton of sugar being imported. So here is a country which produces sugar but can't pay for it, doesn't pay proper price for it, and imports sugar. So this is policy paralysis, this is policy inability to comprehend what the policy should be and passing it on. It's a gamble with the economy. I think demonetization and everything that has happened thereafter is a gamble. This is double or nothing so far as the farmers are concerned.
Has it been disruptive? In a sense, Surjit Bhalla, what's happened in the last year is the economy has got disrupted. Now everyone more or less accepts that GST was necessary. The fact is that you need to have a uniform tax regime, but maybe there will be some pain in the short term was also accepted. But coming on the back of demonetization is what seems to have become, as I call it, a double whammy. So are you seeing any signs of any revival in the near term, or do you believe it's going to be a long and painful process? Is it simply for the RBI to reduce interest rates and come tomorrow private investment will steep into this country at a time when banks are also reluctant to lend?
You know, Rajdeep, it's the Indian economic situation, or rather the politicization of Indian economic thinking has really reached quite an extreme. So we all, the critics of Modi, want to only latch on to one factor, demonetization. It may indeed have been a factor, but as I keep pleading, please show me the evidence. You know that movie, Show Me the Money. Where is the evidence? Of course there was a decline due to demonetization. First we thought that GDP would grow by 5%. It grew at 7.1%. So then now we bring in something else and something else. Of course confidence will go down because of because of GST and demonetization. But where is the evidence? You know, as economists, we really have to worry about providing evidence because the thing is complicated enough. Just look at what each one of your guests has said. I don't want to single each one of them out, but point is they all talk about demand revival. I completely agree. Infrastructure investment, I completely agree. Then there was a curious thing shown, I don't want to get into a debate of that the farm sector is subsidizing the rest of the nation to 2 lakh crores. You know, we really can't have a reasonable discussion when such statistics are bandied about, when everybody knows that the farm sector is heavily subsidized. Be that as it may, please provide me one piece of evidence that if you decreased interest rates, why would things not begin to revive? We are not talking about one instrument for all solutions. We are talking about what is necessary.
Rajiv,
and then we can go on
Rajiv,
to say
respond to what
that
Surjit
listen,
Bhalla is
other
saying.
things are also necessary.
He's
but I'm
offering
talking
the
about
first
the
step.
first amongst equals.
So you're saying this is the important first step. Surjit Bhalla seems to be saying the important first step is lower interest rates, so you incentivize at least people who at the moment are choosing any other place to invest but in India.
So lower interest rate without doubt, but you know, there's some talk of this fiscal stimulus that people are talking about. Now there's three golden rules of fiscal stimulus. You know, it has to be timely. Maybe this is the right time. It has to be temporary, because otherwise, you know, it takes a toll on the government's balance sheet.
Which happened in
2009. And then, you know, things came back to normal. And the third golden rule is that it has to be targeted. Now we have to identify what that target is. And to my mind, that target seems to be investment-led growth. It cannot be stimulated by consumption-led growth, because there is still 25 to 35% capacity utilization still left in the industry. Nobody is going to invest right away, even if you reduce interest rates by 2%. It requires that capacity utilization to get to 80-90% for anybody to start thinking of reinvesting. So it has to be the Chinese model at this point in time, and the government has to make sure that it is time targeted and it is absolutely temporary.
You want to respond to that,
Surjit?
Yeah, look, I mean, first, it was not the case that the temporary investment that took place in 2008-9 stopped right there. It continued, and the fiscal expansion and the inflation that it brought about. So first, let's state the facts. The 2008-9 wasn't a successful, if you will, investment or fiscal adjustment. Second, let's look at what happened in the first quarter of this year, 2017 quarter 1 and quarter 2. Fiscal adjustment or fiscal expansion has already taken place. Public defense and expenditures expanded at a 17% real rate. 17% real rate. How much more do you want the public sector to do? What are they going to do? Just go ahead and dig ditches? I mean, this is classic Keynesianism. So, you know, my plea is, please, just look at the data before coming out with all of the capacity utilization. RBI has been saying every day for 6 months, for 6 years, that the capacity utilization is 70%. Or kiya kya phir usme? I mean, why, you know, we can't trot out all of these, the usual suspects. Let's try and identify the causes of what has brought about this downturn.
SMEs,
it's a serious downturn. It's a serious problem. Let's not come out with platitudes.
No one's coming out with platitudes. Okay.
So we know that SME, SME is in trouble. SME is in trouble for two reasons. One is that, the tier 1 industries which they supply to, they are not doing well. So that is the biggest reason. The second other reason is that, the SMEs, reason for existence in some cases was that, they were able to avoid taxes, and so we were able to, the competitiveness came from tax avoidance, and that has been hit by GST to some extent and demonetization to some extent. Now that cannot be the reason why you can trigger SME growth. I think it will have to be led by investment-led growth.
Investment-led growth. Mr. Haribhakti, you agree with that? That you need to somehow stimulate in a way the economy. Do you agree with the fiscal stimulus in the first time? Has the time come for it?
I'm absolutely for fiscal stimulus. I would say that we must not forget that we are a large economy, a consuming industry economy. We have consumption which has a big space to expand. If everybody is on a consensus that capacity utilization is low, then the only way to get things to get better is to reorganize people and reorganize assets and focus on those parts of the economy which have the ability to quickly provide jobs, get the export engine going, start making consumption move. So we need a combination of lower interest rates, fiscal stimulus, concentrate on the sectors which are in a position to take the high growth path, and make sure that the whole atmosphere starts changing. And I'm certain that within 1.5 years from today, we will see a massive investment coming in, because the capacities would have got utilized by then. Until then, for that 1.5 year, you need to use all these instruments of stimulation and consumption-led growth. And that's what will truly change this whole atmosphere that we are right now facing.
Mr. Arun Kumar, would you agree, Professor Arun Kumar, would you agree with that? That we need to get a fiscal stimulus going for starters to, in a sense, offset this move of crisis of confidence?
Yes, I would agree that we do need a fiscal stimulus, but where should the spending be? And I would say the spending should be where employment generation would be large, for instance, in education and health sector. If you invest only in the infrastructure sector like roads or like the big railway project that's coming up between Ahmedabad, the bullet train project, you'll hardly have any employment generation because that's highly mechanized. So in a sense, the fiscal stimulus has to be not only in investment in infrastructure, but also investment in education and health, also in rural development. For instance, rural infrastructure is very poor in the country, and that's why you have mass migration from rural to urban areas, which is very expensive. So if low-cost housing also, but also in rural sector, for instance, telecommunication, etc., which would be required for digitization. You'd require schools and dispensaries in the rural areas, and that will generate a lot of jobs. So I think we need to generate jobs so that the demand could be stimulated, and that is how capacity utilization would increase. So stimulus, yes, but in certain specific areas.
Stimulus, yes, but in certain specific areas. Obviously, and this is where Dr. Bhalla seemed to question your view that agriculture is subsidizing the rest of the economy. The fact is the country is supposedly, the economy is subsidizing agriculture. My next story is going to be on a loan waiver, and many believe that many of these waivers are simply again bandage for a system that is in crisis. It's only postponing the pain that the agriculture sector is going through. Do you believe that we are postponing the pain, that we need to take tough steps possibly even in the agricultural sector today?
Absolutely. There is no doubt that the loan waiver is not a solution to the farmer and the farming problem. But if you don't give proper price, which Dr. Bhalla thinks he is giving, you're going to have perpetual cycle of loans. One waiver, 5 years, another waiver.
Then you increase VAT and your petrol is expensive.
You're saying this. I just on this point want to play what Raghuram Rajan said, and I will get then Dr. Bhalla for a final response, and he and Raghuram Rajan have often been at loggerheads, some would say. But listen in, Dr. Bhalla, to what Raghuram Rajan said when I asked him about the prescription for the economy last week.
Growth is now 5.7%, down 2%, more than 2% year on year. Inflation is low, but we seem to have entered a phase, some say, of low growth, low inflation, and dare I say, low job creation. The Center of CMI report suggests 1.5 million jobs lost in the first 4 months of the year. Are you worried? Do you believe that the good times are over?
Look, I think we shouldn't be so pessimistic and say the good times are over. I think they can come back, but we should be worried. I think one of the things that has been touted in the last few years is the what we call the population dividend. All these young people coming to the labor force, some of whom are here, if they don't get jobs and they get frustrated, that creates a very unhealthy climate and actually can impede further economic growth, which creates even further unhealthy climate. We can't afford to get into that spiral.
Okay, given that, how do you respond now, Dr. Bhalla, in conclusion? There is a feeling that we've lived in denial for too long. Over the last 12 to 18 months, there's been a sense to talk up the economy. The time has come to get real, which is what perhaps the finance minister is finally doing.
I can't be accused of helping to talk up the economy because I have consistently railed against the very disjointed policy of the RBI in raising interest rates. I'm a student of economics, and economics means the study of countries other than India as well. There are 204 countries, and only in this country are you having a debate that whether interest rate decline or raise affects demand. So we are unique. So let's recognize we are unique and maybe find out what's wrong with us rather than what's wrong with the policy prescription. I want to end with the following. we have had, you know, the usual suspects all trotted out, as which is why they're called the usual suspects. So we have that infrastructure and public expenditure should be increased, fiscal deficit should be expanded, and, you know, the rest of it. Now, as I pointed out just 10 minutes ago, you had the mother of all fiscal expansions in terms of government expenditure in the, January to March and March to June.
Yes.
And you had a GDP growth rate of 5.7%. What more do you want from fiscal expansion? If that has all got you a 17% increase in real terms, YOY in public administration defense has got you 5.7%. What do you think you want the government to do? I mean, you know, I think the RBI needs to get real, and I think the economists in India need to get real. That's what it is. The real rates are high. Monetary policy, interest rates affects everybody, including MSMEs. MSMEs also borrow. The idea that somebody over here,
that will
only
be enough,
fat cats, corporate fat cats borrow, that's just plain wrong.
Okay, I think you've made your point strongly enough. You're reiterating it, but I've run out of time. I've run out of time. You've made your point strongly and effectively, Dr. Bhalla, but there are contrarian views, which is why we are a democracy unlike other countries. When you compare economies, we must also compare the fact as a political democracy, there will always be different views. But thank you all very much for joining me this evening. My take, the time for self-delusion is over. The economy is in trouble and unlikely to recover soon. The downturn may not be linked to demonetization alone, but clearly there is a feel-bad mood in the economy, which has been aggravated by the double whammy, demo plus GST. Getting private investment to revive is the biggest challenge. It won't happen overnight, and we'll need the government to take tough measures. Divestment of Air India, for example, will send out a strong signal of intent, pushing for lower interest rates, reforming the banking sector, focusing on major infra projects like low-cost housing are small steps in the right direction. Mr. Modi came to power on the promise of Achhe Din. A key part of the good days would be job-creating employment. Less talk, more action is the way forward. And since we are talking about the economy and particularly about the farm sector, remember 6 months ago, the Yogi Adityanath government received praise after it announced big loan waivers for small and marginal farmers in Uttar Pradesh. But now it's turning out that those farm waivers may not quite be what the farmer might have intended. Take a look at loans that are as less as 10 rupees and even 1 rupee in some instances and 1 paise in Mathura.
A cruel joke. Mockery of farmers' plight. That's what the Yogi government has offered to the farmers of Uttar Pradesh in the name of loan waiver. It's hard to forget the day UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath announced the big loan waiver for farmers.
लोगों को लगता है कि हम लोगों ने किसानों का कर्ज माफ किया तो हम प्रदेश की जनता पर अतिरिक्त भार छोड़ेंगे। कतई नहीं। हम लोग तय कर चुके हैं कि हम लोग स्वयं के और सरकार के फिजूल खर्ची को रोक देंगे।
But this was his so-called gift. Chiddi Lal, a farmer of Mathura, has been given loan waiver worth 1 paisa. That's right, 1 paisa of his loan was waived off by the Yogi government.
हमारे ऊपर सर 1,55,000 रुपए कर्ज था पंजाब नेशनल बैंक गोवर्धन से और इसमें से हमारा 1 पैसा माफ किया गया है.
And this is not an isolated case. Another farmer from Itawa was given 19 paise as loan waiver. He says he's become a laughing stock in his village.
पहले मैं तो ये सोच रहा था भी कोई प्रिंट से गड़बड़ हो सकती है. फाइल में आए तो 19 पैसे मगर सही इसमें छप नहीं पाए पैसे. लेकिन वो जब प्रमाण पत्र मिला उसमें 19 पैसे मिले.
And there are more, many more. These farmers say they feel fooled and cheated by the Yogi government. As farmers suffer, this is all that the government has to offer.
कुछ टेक्निकल दिक्कतें रही हैं. अब मानसिकता तो पुरानी चली आ रही है. तो बाय बदलवे में थोड़ा.
The political bickering can go on, and the blame game between parties will not end anytime soon. But what about these farmers? Years pass by, governments change, but their situation remains the same. Big promises are made during elections, but when will governments live up to their word? Bureau Report, India Today.
Let's turn to tonight's other big story, and it comes from Mumbai, where less than 24 hours after his arrest, Dawood Ibrahim's brother Iqbal Kaskar has named some NCP leaders during his interrogation by the anti-extortion cell. Thane Police Commissioner Parambir Singh has now confirmed that there are politicians who have been named, but did not actually give us the names, but said that they will come under the scanner for alleged links with the underworld don.
He has the blood of 257 innocents on his hands. Did political leaders help India's most wanted terrorist evade the law? Did the mastermind of the 1993 Mumbai blast get political cover? Thane cop busts the big Dawood Neta nexus.
Names of more than one politicians have cropped up in the investigation so far, but that is subject to verification. We are verifying, we are collecting evidence.
Undeniable Dawood Neta link.
Let us complete the investigation against these people whose names have cropped up, and once we have the evidence, then we will share the name. That will be the right stage to share the names.
The Thane top cop stopping short of naming leaders of any political party, but confirming to India Today that gangsters were acting on tip-offs from netas to threaten, extort and illegally grab land. Less than 24 hours after his arrest, underworld don and international terror financer Dawood Ibrahim's brother Iqbal Kaskar has been remanded to 8 days in police custody for running an extortion racket. But investigations have led the police to a dirty, it was Ram Jethmalani who had first named Sharad Pawar and the UPA for letting off Dawood Ibrahim, and at least 2 other NCP leaders are under the scanner for their alleged links. Will the police name the netas linked to Dawood Ibrahim? Does the connection extend beyond the NCP? The international terror financer's brother has been nabbed. Will Dawood Ibrahim be next? With Mayuresh Ganpatyay and Sahil Joshi, Bureau Report, India Today.
Welcome back. Let's turn to my segment that I call Only in India. Now, which is this country where someone who is allegedly the adopted daughter of someone who's been arrested takes that individual to the jail and then disappears, and the police can't find her? It's the story of Honeypreet Singh. We are told she's fled to Nepal, and we are told she's an expert in changing her outfits and wearing disguises. So where really is Honeypreet? And what really is she looking like at the moment? Take a look.
Gurmeet Ram Rahim Singh's adopted daughter Honeypreet is a master of disguise. From CBI to Haryana Police, security forces are now chasing Dera Sacha Sauda's chiefs. Honeypreet made it clear she wears many a hat when it comes to fitting into new roles. She now has artfully used her talent for vanishing into thin air. She's rumored to have slipped to Nepal, possibly changing the way she looks, despite a security alert at the borders. Honeypreet is not alone when it comes to duping police teams in pursuit. Elements in Nepal are also helping her evade the law. Gurmeet Ram Rahim Singh had come to the rescue of people in Nepal when the Himalayan nation was reeling under a devastating earthquake in 2015. Sirsa-based Dera had pitched in with food, essential commodities and medicines sent by Gurmeet Ram Rahim Singh. The Dera chief had also sent a team of doctors to assist those affected by the earthquake. Gurmeet Ram Rahim Singh was also seen personally distributing relief not far from Kathmandu. Many in Nepal have not forgotten the helping hand that the Dera extended to them in their time of crisis. The Dera subsequently pitched in with several schools and ashrams in Nepal. It's no surprise that Honeypreet was last traced to an ashram some 350 kilometers from Kathmandu. The region has a large number of Dera supporters and devotees who swear by Dera Sacha Sauda.